The year was 2015, and fans of Undertale were captivated by its story, its gameplay, and, most of all, its characters. One character stood out, described only in very rare scenes and by digging through the game files. W.D. Gaster. Everyone was enthralled by him, creating art and interpretations of a character who they never even met before. And we wondered that maybe, just maybe, there would be a day where Toby Fox would release another game so that we can meet him. But that would take years, right? Well, in the very same year, in December of 2015, a hidden message was shared online by Toby Fox, and nobody found it. It went unnoticed for years, and was only discovered much later through archives. This message was written in Wingdings, the font associated with our mysterious W.D. Gaster. This next experiment seems very interesting. Then, an archive from 1 year later shows another update on the same website. 3 heroes appeared to banish the angels' heaven. What website were these posted on? Deltarune.com. Hi, I'm Dan, just an amateur theory crafter here to analyze some of my favorite games. After all the time since Deltarune first released, there's still a lot of debate and denial over Gaster's involvement in the game, which irks me. I get it. If you play through Undertale and Deltarune and don't use the internet at all, chances are you have no idea who Gaster is. This video can also serve as an introduction if you want to learn that, although this is far from the first video to do that. But if you're under the impression that Gaster is just a background lore character, that couldn't be further from the truth. In the current version of Deltarune, he is the very first and the very last character you speak to. How do we know? I'll get into that later. I'm here to explain that not only is Gaster very important to Deltarune, but he is also the one who created it, as part of a special bond with you, the player. To begin, let's discuss what the people had to work with back in those early days in 2015. Where is W.D. Gaster in Undertale? Gaster is primarily found through rare events connected to the fun values, which most people will never encounter, and with several different events that are impossible to happen together in one playthrough. Fun values are a mechanic where each playthrough has a random value assigned between 1 and 100, which dictates some random events that can occur. These ones give some direct context relating to Gaster. One example is the sound test, a random event that has some unused songs, including Gaster's theme, labeled as him in the files. Once you play this, it prevents you from pausing it or playing any other songs until the sound test closes. Now, Toby Fox is a musical madman who loves to use leitmotifs all the time. These are specific musical patterns or melodies that are repeated throughout various songs and can signify a character, place, or theme of the story, and evolve depending on where they're used. So, it's important to keep track of where Gaster's theme might be showing up. So far, we still don't know who Gaster is. To help explain that, there are the Gaster followers. For example, this one says, "I understand why Asgore waited so long to hire a new royal scientist. The previous one, Dr. Gaster, his brilliance was irreplaceable. However, his life was cut short. One day his experiments went wrong and, well, I needn't gossip. After all, it's rude to talk about someone who's listening." Another one says, "It makes sense why Asgore took so long to hire a new royal scientist. After all, the old one, Dr. Gaster, what an act to follow. They say he created the core. However, his life was cut short. One day he fell into his creation and, will Alphys end up the same way?" And the final one, "Alphys might work faster, but the old royal scientist, Dr. W.D. Gaster, one day he vanished without a trace. They say he shattered across time and space. Haha, how can I say so without fear? I'm holding a piece of him right here." Next, the most direct appearance of Gaster. At fun value number 66, this hallway can appear in Waterfall, and there's a 10% chance of a special door appearing right here.
Or you could be Toby Fox and get a brown door and walk right past it!
Once you enter, this man just stands there, and once you interact with him, he's gone. Now this is almost definitely Gaster. The fandom just kind of assumed that when they first saw him, but there is some solid evidence too. For example, if you slow down the sound effect that plays when he disappears, you actually hear Gaster's theme. The only other time when this sound effect is used is for the Gaster follower who says he has a piece of Gaster. So in both cases, Gaster's theme makes sense. Next, Gaster also has some unused stats as a monster in Undertale. This is in the code and it's something meant for data miners to see. And it's a lot of 6s. This explains why the 66 fun value shows the mystery man, which is more solid proof that Gaster is this mysterious man. So watch out for 6s going forward. From this, it seems like Gaster might be a parallel to the devil. Now this is especially relevant with the angel and heaven being an important theme in Undertale and Deltarune. Finally, and most importantly, only available through modifying the code, there is a room that plays the mysterious entry number 17. This is not a true lab entry from Alphys. Instead, it plays a strange noise in the background, with a new text sound, and is written entirely in the Wingdings font.
Entry number 17. Dark. Darker, yet darker. The darkness keeps growing. The shadows cutting deeper. Photon readings negative. This next experiment seems very, very interesting. What do you two think?
Seeing this helps to confirm that the WD probably stands for Wingdings, since that's the name of the font. And by the way, the sound effect in the background is called Muse_Smile. Now finally, Sans is very connected to Gaster. First of all is that font connection. Wingdings is a font, just like Sans and Papyrus, so maybe Gaster's a skeleton, or maybe he's also related to the two of them. In Sans' fight, he also uses these things, which are called Gaster Blasters. Sans also seems to have been a part of the experiments involving time and space. He even has a secret workshop behind his house which has some illegible symbols. If Sans and Gaster are strongly connected in Undertale, this should apply to Deltarune Sans in some way too. However, I won't be covering their connection much in this video because I think we just don't have enough information to conclude anything yet. But I'd love to see other people explore this more. With all these clues, the fanbase went wild and created their own wacky Gaster interpretations. But we all waited, because we still wanted to see if Gaster would ever truly appear in a Toby Fox game. So we held our breath and... As I mentioned before, Deltarune.com has archived snapshots which show Wingdings text from December 2015 and December 2016. This is some of the earliest public information about Deltarune, hinting towards and introducing a new game that nobody knew was going to exist. This first message connects the next experiment from Entry 17 to Deltarune, which makes a lot of sense. Negative photons, dark, darker yet darker, shadows cutting deep, these all point to dark worlds and growing darkness, which is the main focus of Deltarune. It's interesting that Gaster is referring to Deltarune as an experiment, or maybe the experiment is just some aspect of it. Now the second message is directly from the prophecy in Deltarune. This tells us that Gaster is most likely the one who wrote the prophecy, and this is further supported by Ralsei claiming that the prophecy is foretold by time and space, Gaster being described as shattered across time and space. And also, much later in Chapter 4, the hymn version of the prophecy describes shadows cutting deep, another callback to Entry 17. For each time a version of Deltarune was actually released, the official Twitter account would go dark and be filled with someone communicating to us with a unique, all-capital speaking mannerism.
Welcome. Have you been looking for me? How wonderful. I have been looking for you as well. I have something I want to show you, something I think you will find very, very interesting.
Upon hearing this, it's almost impossible to treat this as anyone but Gaster. This is a direct callback to Entry 17. Then, going back a few tweets, "Have you been looking for me?" makes perfect sense. The community had been searching for Gaster for years, hoping to hear about him. For an upcoming Toby Fox game, it's what many players desired more than anything, to meet Gaster.
But it is not complete yet. No, it is far from complete. Thus, I have a small favor to ask of you. Return here in 24 hours. At that time, I will ask you a few questions. Then, using your responses, we will approach its realization. Thank you for waiting so long. After all, you and I, we have both been waiting such a very long time. So to be here, finally, on the verge of connection, is quite exciting. I look forward to creating a new future with you. Now, show yourself, Deltarune.
So, Gaster is using Twitter, real social media, to connect with us and to invite us to try his new program, sending us the link for Deltarune. At this time, the file for the game wasn't called Deltarune, it was survey_program, and functionally was the Deltarune demo with only Chapter 1. The version for the game was also version 0.6.6.6, just like Gaster's stats. Now, Deltarune begins with this sequence, where you create a vessel. First, the connection is established, just like Gaster described in the tweets, and then notice the song playing in the background. This song is called Another Hymn. It clearly uses Gaster's motif, as further proof that this is Gaster, and the title of the song is also a reference to him, which was Gaster's first theme. Now, the voice who introduces us here also has the exact same dialogue and speech mannerisms as the tweets. It's still Gaster. The game starts with Gaster welcoming us, first online in the real world if you were around back then, and then in the game's interface. We create a vessel, which, according to the tweets, will help us approach its realization. Now this is unfortunately cut off by a different voice, who says we cannot choose who we are before our soul comes to inhabit Chris. Now, take a look at the menu screen for Chapter 1 back when it was the survey program. It's barren, digital. The same voice, Gaster, narrates what happens when you modify your game and change your saves. You don't use your power of determination to control save files anymore. Gaster is the one modifying your connection. For PlayStation users, Gaster also narrates the achievements. He reappears upon a game over as well, giving you the opportunity to respawn. In fact, there's a special version of this when reloading to fight the knight, with variations in dialogue depending on whether you have the Shadow Mantle or whether you get close to winning. Gaster is in control. This is his game. Something else that's interesting, the company that owns Undertale and Deltarune is called Royal Sciences LLC. With Gaster being the royal scientist before Alphys, this seems like another hint towards Gaster being in control behind the scenes. Out of anything they could have chosen, it's very, very interesting. Before Chapter 2 released, and before the release of Chapters 3 and 4, Gaster once again took over the Deltarune Twitter account. For Chapter 2,
how long it has been. Once more, I thank you for your patience in these difficult times. You have done excellently to persevere. Deltarune grows brightly from your hope. Now, shall we? Shall we go again? The second field, the second connection.
And then for 3 and 4,
how long it has been. Days that felt like years. Years that felt like days. And yet, no matter how much time passes, it still trembles. Our beautiful connection. I can feel it quickening now. How lucky we are to need each other in this way. So then, will you partake once more? The third episode, the fourth fate.
Throughout all the Deltarune chapters, there are some hints to Gaster in the main story and gameplay. Remember Muse_Smile that played with Entry 17? Well, it reappears in several locations in Deltarune. For example, making a phone call in the Dark World, which is described as garbage noise in Chapter 2. Then it's also slowed down in the Light World near the shelter, and in the Holiday House basement. Now, it's difficult to tie everything that uses Muse Smile back to Gaster himself, but there's another line of thinking for it. Why is Muse Smile in Entry 17? Well, in Entry 17, they're doing experiments on darkness, dark worlds. Could the background noise be because of that, and not because of Gaster? A byproduct of the connection between light and dark worlds? This would explain the shelter, a doorway to the dark world, and the phone trying to call something in the light world from the dark world. Now, it doesn't clearly explain the holiday household's connection, but maybe there's something deep underground all of Hometown akin to a dark world. This would probably connect to the shelter itself, which would be a bunker deep underground anyways, so maybe it just spreads a lot further than we thought. Gaster has some connections to the secret bosses too, especially Jevil in Spamton. Now, his motif is hard to accurately point out just because of how simple it is, but it does appear in some interesting places. Most notably, the freedom motif assigned to the hidden bosses. Go check out Andrew Cunningham's video on this, it's amazing, especially if you have any interest in video game music. The old shopkeeper Sham also describes how Jevil's change in perspective after meeting a strange someone made his outlook darker yet darker. Another Entry 17 callback. Spamton was using the phone with someone who was giving him advice, but eventually drove him mad. And at the end, when an Addison tried to pick up the phone to see who it was, they only heard garbage noise. However, it seems more like the knight was the one responsible for driving these people insane. The king describes how Jevil met the knight before going mad, which is probably the strange someone mentioned by Sham. The knight's blade also gives off a shadow crystal, which could explain how they're giving them away. And finally, the old man Gerson describes the knight, someone with a sword, leaving through his study, and then also describes how someone left a shadow crystal for him, and probably wanted him to use it. So, the knight was probably the one who delivered the shadow crystal to Gerson. Finally, the fact that the knight didn't make the Chapter 3 Dark Fountain and wasn't present for most of it, explains why there's no shadow crystal holding hidden boss there, apart from the knight itself once it arrives. Chris made the Dark World, and the knight wasn't there, so nobody could get given the shadow crystal and driven mad. So we have both the knight and Gaster connecting to these hidden bosses, which brings up an important point. There's a connection between the knight and Gaster. Apart from what brought us here, they also have the same pure black and white color scheme, which is also shared by entities of pure darkness, such as the Titan and their spawn. Next, the knight has clear holes in its hand, also called stigmata. It seems like Gaster's Mystery Man sprite also has this, but it's not confirmed. Then there's the fact that the knight strongly resembles a Titan itself. If the knight's form is enhanced by darkness and is related to the Titans in any way, then it makes sense that Gaster might be involved. He's the one who directly experiments with darkness according to Entry 17, and would probably have the most knowledge of how to harness it. Then there's the shadow crystals and their holders. It seems as though the knight delivering the crystals to the bosses is passing on Gaster's messages, explaining the limitations of their world, the pursuit for freedom, promises of higher forms of reality. This is something that Gaster understands better than anyone else, seeing as how he even reached out to our reality. Now finally, at the very end of this version of Deltarune, there is one final message from the man himself.
Well done. The halfway mark has been attained, but it is still waiting. How much longer now? My Deltarune.
This time he's referring to it directly. My Deltarune. Keep this in mind for later. By the way, this dialogue is different if you play the PlayStation version, and avoid getting any achievements at all. There's a few smaller hints towards Gaster throughout the games that I didn't mention, because this isn't meant to be a compilation of everything somewhat related to Gaster. But I've described at least most of his significant appearances. To summarize, W.D. Gaster, the former royal scientist from Undertale, is also the first character and last character you talk to in Deltarune. He has been hinted at throughout the whole game, and even outside of the game. To those still questioning his importance and his involvement in Deltarune as a whole, let me make a comparison to a similar character for Undertale, Flowey.
Flowey also took over the Undertale Twitter account to invite us to play the game.
He makes a brief appearance at the very start of the game, and then is mostly absent throughout all of Undertale, with only a few hints and Easter eggs related to him, until you get right near the end upon defeating Asgore. Despite being absent for most of the game, he is painfully important, and him, or Asriel, is arguably the most important character in the entire main story, being the final boss for 2 out of 3 endings. Gaster has been very similar up to this point in Deltarune. He talks about the game externally, taking over accounts. The game opens with him. He lingers over the entire game even more closely than Flowey did, and we already know of his direct connection to some of the more significant parts of Deltarune's plot, the prophecy. Plus, if our goal ends up being to defy the prophecy, this means defying Gaster, which would lead to an inevitable battle with him. Now, this doesn't mean that he will definitely appear as a normal character, as the knight could even be his stand-in for fulfilling the prophecy, or maybe someone else. It's clear that Gaster is some kind of creator. The way he refers to it, this next experiment, my Deltarune, something I want to show you, creating a new future with you. This all points to him being a creator of Deltarune. There's also the file labeling, survey_program, and the version with 6s, just like Gaster's stats. He is in control. He helps us restore our save when we die, he lets us modify our save, he even tracks our achievements. But the question is, what did Gaster create specifically? From what we can tell, he definitely created the prophecy, and the prophecy is extremely specific about everything that happens in the game. Gaster calls it his Deltarune, the Deltarune meaning the prophecy, the tale of Deltarune. He also seemingly established the connection for us to join too, the game that we can play. This is why he narrates it and confirms that it's working with us. But did Gaster create the entire world of Deltarune? The light world's reality? Is that why it's capable of being influenced by darkness to create dark worlds? Well, let's explore this possibility and see where it leads us. Deltarune as an experiment is first brought up and hinted at in Undertale through entry 17, which was echoed on Deltarune.com. Now we know Gaster was the royal scientist working for Asgore, and he was very impressive. There's also no royal sciences in Deltarune as far as we know of, because there's no monarchy and there's no need for advanced scientific research in their town. So, royal sciences and Gaster's experiments seem to connect more to his past in Undertale than Deltarune. Now, I want to draw attention to a specific phrasing from one of Gaster's tweets. I look forward to creating a new future with you. A new future? The implication of this line to me seems to be referencing Undertale as the previous story and Deltarune as the new future. Perhaps this means that this is the Undertale Gaster, who used his creation to contact us in hopes of creating Deltarune as a new alternative to Undertale. Think about this. Why does Deltarune use the Undertale characters? Is it just so that Toby could reuse sprites, designs, and characters? I don't think so, and even if that's a part of it, Toby loves to introduce meta-lore reasons to explain these decisions. Deltarune, when compared to Undertale, takes place on the surface, in a town devoid of crime and violence. It is the peace and the freedom that Undertale's monsters would long for. This was Asgore's goal, to free all the monsters to get to the surface. So it would make sense if he directed Gaster, his royal scientist, to try to find a way to get the monsters to be free. So this is the theory that this would lead to. Maybe Gaster created Deltarune as the peaceful and free alternate world to Undertale, in part to fulfill his duties as the royal scientist, seeking freedom. This might not end up being the most accurate explanation, and Gaster might not have been the one to physically create the Deltarune reality, but something like this could definitely be a piece of the puzzle. Gaster has a very friendly relationship with the player, which sometimes borders on sensual. We share a powerful connection with him, and I believe this is because we are both from beyond the world of Deltarune. We both come from outside. I think that the prophecy, as described in various different ways by Gaster, Ralsei, and in the Church Dark World, explains this connection between us and Gaster. As powerful beings with a lot of influence in the world, I believe that the player is the angel, and Gaster is the devil. Gaster being a stand-in for the devil mostly comes from all the 666 in his stats, which is pretty suspicious. But there's also the idea that the devil is a fallen angel, and Gaster fell into his creation. Also, cooperating with Gaster is a figurative deal with the devil. The main focus for this idea is that the angel and the devil are two parallel entities, which are both powerful beings from beyond the world. There's other theory videos that explain the player being the angel figure described in the prophecy in much more detail than I'll go into here, so I'll keep it brief. The player's soul is shown possessing the angel doll for a bit, which is pretty interesting. Then the part of the prophecy with the angel is blocked from our view. Susie has a strange reaction, as if it's not what she'd expect the angel to look like. And because it's completely blocked out for us, it's completely black there. And what happens when you look at a black screen? You would see your own reflection. Another prophecy states that they'll see the tail of hell take crawl. This is the most direct reference to the devil or hell in Deltarune, and this is probably referring to Friend, a mysterious entity that you should watch other videos about. But Friend shares a lot of connection to Gaster, including being incredibly rare and using the similar all-capital naming convention for things related to Gaster. Another prophecy states they'll hear the ring of heaven's call, which I think is a bit too vague for us to predict just yet. I think that this will happen later on, similar to the tail of hell taking crawl, so it'd mostly be guesses to try and predict it. But my theory on what these things mean, first of all, I think heaven is the real world. The strongest evidence for this is Spamton, who calls the end goal of his ascension towards freedom as heaven. And he believes that he can attain this from taking Chris's soul, or our soul, someone from the real world. So, this takes us to the prophecy for the end of the game, banishing the angels' heaven. This would be banishing the real world from influencing the light world anymore. The world of Deltarune would be freed from us. And in this line of thinking, the angels' heaven is just the player's world. This explains why this is at the world's edge. They can only banish our world from the edge of their world, the edge of the game, its boundaries. So, going back to the prophecy about the angel. The angel, once banished, will finally meet with its desire. But what is our desire? Could it be our desire for an ending to the game? Finally meet. Wait. Our desire.
Have you been looking for me? How wonderful.
For an upcoming Toby Fox game, it's what many players desire more than anything. What if our desire is to meet Gaster? What if the ending of the game is a meeting with Gaster? Gaster hints that we've been looking for each other, showing that our desire could very much be to meet Gaster. This is one of the only objective character traits that the player is given, and it's at the very first introduction of the game to us. So once we get banished, where would we be? Well, we would have no more connection. We would be shattered across time and space, everywhere and nowhere. And who is there too? Gaster. A simple meeting between a game's player and its creator would be a very poetic ending. It even mirrors the idea of meeting your maker after death. Now, this is just an option for where things might be going. This might not happen at all, but I think it would be very cool for something like this to go down. I think it's pretty fitting as a video game ending that came in a fever dream that Toby Fox had to make. This is the overview of what I think Gaster's involvement is in this game. I think he is the creator, I think he is behind the prophecy, I think that he is truly the one in control, and I think that by the end of the game, our desire will be fulfilled to meet Gaster. However, there's still some parts of the puzzle that I didn't cover. For example, what is Chris's involvement in all of this? Why is Chris the one we possess? And how are they involved with us coming to possess them? Who is the forgotten Eggman behind the tree? Are they Gaster? Well, I'll talk about all this and more in the next video about Chris's past. Subscribe so you don't miss it. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe and show your support. And leave a comment about what your favorite Gaster is, or what you think Gaster will do in Deltarune. But seriously, thank you guys so much for all your support that you've given me over the past couple of Deltarune videos I made. I'm finally talking about something that isn't Chris Slash, so hopefully you enjoyed that.